Hello and welcome to another practical. In this video I want to show you one useful trick for brawler against brawler matchups. In particular, it's useful when you fight against a stronger brawling ship and in situations where your DPS in brawling range is lower but your DPS at scrum kiting range is higher. One example of this basic matchup would be brawling Tristan with blasters against a Merlin. So both brawling ships, but at brawling range, the Merlin would be better, but at scrum kiting range, Tristan would be better. So even though you are fighting in a brawling ship, you actually need to switch into scrum kiting. And I will show you how to do it effectively when you have either control or if you have a positional advantage. So this is the setup. I'm inside the complex in Brawling Ishkur and Hikata warps in. My feat is quite standard. It's a single rep Brawling Ishkur, so I have Macro Warp Drive Scrum double webs in medium slots, triple blasters and Nosferatu in high slots, a small Dead Space rep plus ADC plus anti-explosive resistance module in low slots, and rigs for active tank. Okay, so Hikata starts burning to me with Macro Warp Drive on. What you do in these situations is you click to start burning in the opposite direction to your opponent. The idea is you want to align your movement vectors and then give yourself as much time as possible to kill the momentum of your opponent with webs and scrums. Ultimately, what you are trying to achieve is to establish range control at a range that's advantageous to you. So you don't want to get in the brawling range at all. You want to scrum kite, but since the fight did not start at a button, you kind of need to manage the momentum of your opponent. Because if you just click orbit 7.5 kilometers, your ship will start burning towards the Hikata, and then you will just end up too close. And if your opponent has equal control, then you may just end up at the range that you do not want to be. So this is how you do it in terms of micromanagement. You overheat your control modules, webs and scrums, and you start spamming them as soon as your opponent at around 20 kilometers. Because the EVE client is pretty slow, you usually can apply webs before the opponent is actually within the web range. So the ship in your client will be kind of behind the server. So you can see here, for example, in my overview, it shows that Hikata is 15 kilometers and I already have both webs applied. Well, actually, it's not 15 kilometers, most likely it's probably more like 12, which you can see here. So you don't need to basically the takeaway, do not wait until you see that your opponent is within the web range, because your opponent will be within the web range one tick earlier when you will see in your client. And when you immediately apply Scrum as well. So what it does, it kills the momentum You can see that Hikata was burning towards me at 3 kilometers per second, but despite that, it still never managed to come closer than around 5 kilometers. And 5 kilometers is too far for Void. So essentially it means that your opponent needs to switch into longer range ammo. And when, since your DPS is higher at scrum range, you will be a favorite for the DPS race. Yeah, that said, in this specific matchup, since Ishkur has Tech 2 kinetic and thermal resists, you can probably just out-brawl a Hikata point blank, but it's more technical to do it the way I'm doing it. It's just much easier and safer. Okay, so here is another instructive moment. You can see that Hikata started moving away. So he realized that he is not actually going to get close, and he is going to lose the DPS race. And he started moving away. See that now it's about 6 kilometers, and the distance increases. It's important to see when your opponent decides to bail and when you need to stop being risk averse and start chasing the opponent's ship to not let him escape. So the issue here is that our control is approximately equal, about 150 meters per second. So I need to make sure that I'm moving in the same direction as my opponent in order to maintain the distance. If I click orbit or keep at range 8 kilometers, there is a very good chance that the Hikata will actually burn away from the scrum, because my ship will need to turn, and when every time you turn you lose your speed, and every time you lose your speed the distance increases. And I do not realize it until it's pretty late. So here I click orbit 7.5 kilometers. It's acceptable, but it's not really the cleanest decision. The cleanest decision is to just click approach. By this point, I already secured the victory in the DPS race, so I really don't care if Hikata turns around again, and even if I end up closer than I want, I will still win the DPS race. So orbit 7.5 kilometers is just too risk averse and unsafe. And here I realize that Hikata is actually going to just burn away from my scrum, and I click approach, which is a correct decision. And I also overhit my scrum. So here it should be fine. So you can see that my ship turned around and I'm just about stabilizing the distance between our ships. But it was not very clean execution. And here I think I, for some reason, turn off the heat on my scrum. Yes. And I do it 150 meters too early. So for some reason, this is probably some kind of brain luck, I thought that 9 kilometers, that this distance basically is sufficient for me to stop hitting my scrum. But it's not, because the distance for my scrum is like 9 kilometers, I think. And Hikata does the right thing, so he was pre-aligned somewhere, and in this hopeless situation, you always pre-align somewhere, and then you just spam warp out. And if your opponent makes a mistake like this, it also quite often happens when you fight against a kiter. The kiters quite often lose the point for like a second or two. You just immediately out because you already was pre-aligned and he's out. Yeah, but ultimately the source of this mistake is that I mismanaged my range. I should have just clicked approach when I was 5 or 6 kilometers away, and I noticed that the Hikata started moving away. Okay, so I think this is a pretty instructive fight in terms of like intermediate to advanced techniques that you can use to gain advantage in matchups that may look unfavorable. Hope you found it useful, and I will see you in next practicals.